Hello and warm welcome everyone. Today we are going to talk about and discuss and I'm trying to understand what is reader response theory. So reader response theory है क्या? ये समझने के लिए हम लोग को पहले ये समझना होगा कि new criticism क्या कहता है. New criticism is actually advocating that the text is very important. Text is the autotelic or the self-contained object. So यही meaning produce कर रहा है, यही important segment है to understand or decode or to extract meaning. So this is an important factor for new criticism. New criticism. But reader response theory क्या कह रहा है? It's actually trying to emphasize that reader's role is very important and critical. It's playing a significant role in creating the meaning of the text. It is arguing that the meaning of the text is not fixed and it is itself a dynamic product. Dynamic क्यों कह रहा है इसको? क्योंकि हर रीडर का अपना टेक होता है, अपना बैकग्राउंड है और उसके अकॉर्डिंग वो समझने की कोशिश करता है उस टेक्स्ट को. सो न्यू क्रिटिसिज्म क्या कह रहा है? वो दोनों ऑथर को और रीडर को नेगेट करता है, रिफ्यूट करता है और टेक्स्ट को इम्पोर्टेंट मानता है, ऑटोटेलिक मानता है. न्यू क्रिटिसिज्म. लेकिन रीडर रिस्पॉन्स में रीडर बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट रोल प्ले कर रहा है to decode the meaning of the text. So reader is very important. It says wait, new critics just wait. Reader का importance, अगर reader ही ना हो तो text का meaning extract कौन करेगा? So a very important role which is played by to decode the meaning is played by reader. Okay, so reader response theory is advocating that. Okay, so moving on to, so what we see that a literary text does not have one fixed or universal meaning. Rather, meaning is produced through the interaction between the text and the reader. Therefore, the text is providing the words and structures, but the reader's imagination, उसका जो रीडर का जो कल्चरल बैकग्राउंडिंग है, इमोशंस है, इमेजिनेशंस है, the interpretive strategies, that is actually bringing life to the text and it is giving and generating new meaning to it. Therefore, we see that how reader response theory is emerging in 1960s and 70s as a reaction against these formalist and structuralist approaches. And where we saw that it is treated, the text is treated as self-contained object. So instead of focusing solely on author's intention or the formal structure of the text, reader response critiques argue that reader is playing an important and active part in decoding or creating the meaning from the text. Therefore, the critical focus is what does the text mean? From here, we see that how it is moving on into how is meaning generated when a reader is engaged or reads the text. So that is the main motive of reader response theory. Here is the list of theorists who are associated with reader response theory. To begin with is the Louise Rosenblatt. She is giving the theory of transactional theory where she is trying to emphasize that reading is a transaction. It's not a one-way process, it's a two-way traffic. And the reader and the text are both exchanging, are partners in meaning making. So she is trying to differentiate between efferent reading and aesthetic reading. Efferent reading, it actually emphasizes on the reading for information or instruction's sake. So it is focusing on information or instruction, and aesthetic reading is actually reading for lived experience or emotional response. So it's a lived experience or emotional response. For example, if you see Robert Frost's poem, The Road Not Taken, in the efferent meaning, we see that it kind of can be interpreted as an advice about how to or what can be done to make choices. And if we read it aesthetically, aesthetic reading, you might feel that the speaker is hesitant, it is regretting, it is nostalgic. He is nostalgic and make there it is making meaning from their own emotional engagement. So there is own emotional engagement involved in this. So Rosenblatt is trying to say that the transaction between the reader and the text is creating the poem's real meaning. Next, next is the theorist Wolfgang Iser, and he is giving an important theory which is implied reader, and his focus is on the interaction between text and reader. So therefore he mentions that text have gaps or blanks and that is inviting the reader's imagination to complete them. So यहाँ पे क्या हो रहा है, दो difference यहाँ पे दे रहे हैं Wolfgang Iser, which one is implied reader and the other is the actual reader. यहाँ पे जो actual reader है वो हम और आप है जो text पढ़ते हैं, right? For example, the real person who is reading the text. और implied में क्या होता है, जो भी author लिखता है वो envision करता है कि मैं जैसा समझ रहा हूँ वैसे ही reader भी समझे. So this is the kind of imaginative aspect of the writer himself or the author himself. For example, if you see Sherlock Holmes, the author is expecting the readers that it will he or she or the audience will be noticing the clues or feel the suspense or guess suspects. So the text will be guiding the readers to act like detectives. So this is the envision of the implied reader of the writer himself. Next we move on to Hans Robert Joss, and he's giving the theory of reception theory, and he's introducing the concept of horizon of expectations, where he mentions that readers' interpretations is depending on the historical and cultural context. So the core idea is actually the meaning depends on the historical moment or the cultural moment of the reader. So every era which he is mentioning, every era has the horizon of expectations. जैसे set of cultures है, norms है, moral values है, literary conventions है, जो जो shape करता है readers के response को. For example, if you see Frankenstein, Mary Shelley का, वो फर्स्ट पब्लिश हो रहा है और सारे रीडर्स मेनी रीडर्स वहां पे क्या देख रहे हैं, वो बेसिकली देख रहे हैं दैट फ्रैंकेनस्टाइन एज अ गॉथिक हॉरर स्टोरी about the monster. But आजकल के टाइम में, in modern times, when you read Frankenstein, it is actually influenced by sci-fi, science fiction kind of thing. Some see it as a feminist text. Some see as a post-humanism text. So सब कोई अलग अलग इंटरप्रिटेशन से अपना इंटरप्रिटेशन दे रहे हैं for the text, for the same text. Okay, so the same text is acquiring new meanings of the reader's horizon of expectation, which is actually changing over time. Okay, next we move on to Stanley Fish, who is again giving interpretive communities. This theory is actually what he is mentioning is that meaning is not individual but actually socially produced. So a community, the society is producing the meaning. Okay, and the readers belong to interpretive communities, share conventions and reading strategies. So the key idea of this interpretative communities, what Stanley Fish is mentioning, is actually determined by the community norms, which he mentions community norms, and not by the author's intention or the textual features alone. No. Okay, so we don't read text as an isolated or individual beings or individual text, rather we see it as a socially produced text. So when we read that, we actually try to understand the institutional training or the cultural training of the text. So for example, if you see John Milton's Paradise Lost, the very first line begins with of man's first disobedience. This again is kind of a religious community where we see that it's actually seen as a moral sin, a moral lesson about a sin. सो फिर अगर हम लोग दूसरे कम्युनिटी को देखें, लिटरेरी और एकेडमिक कम्युनिटी को देखें, तो वो फिर उसको पढ़ेगा मिल्टन पैराडाइज लॉस्ट को एज पॉलिटिकल एलिगरी अबाउट अथॉरिटी, रिबेलियन. अगर एक फेमिनिस्ट कम्युनिटी का रीडिंग हम लोग देखें, तो ईव का पोर्ट्रेल कैसा हो रहा है मिल्टन पैराडाइज लॉस्ट में, उसको देखा जाएगा. सो हाउ सी इज कंस्ट्रक्टेड इन द पेट्रियार्कल सेटअप. So her community has their own understanding of the text. So it is not individual construction, it is socially produced construction of the readers of the same. Next, we see Norman Holland, and he is giving identity theory, where he is saying that reading is a form of psychological projection. So it is creating identity of its own. Each reader is trying to read the text according to their own experiences, own identity and emotions. So for example, if you see Cinderella, a child might see that story just like a story of hope or magic. But when an adult is watching that or reading Cinderella, what he is doing, he is actually experiencing the kind of hardships or trying to see that how Cinderella is experiencing the hardships, a tale which is of perseverance and reward. So that kind of thing an adult is saying with the same text. So it is somewhere creating the identity of the reader. So each response is revealing more about the reader's psychological projection, what the reader's psyche is that than the story itself. So the story is definitely important, but more so ever, the reader's psychological projection is more important, which is creating the identity of the reader. So Holland is calling this as the identity theme, which is actually the recurring personal pattern. Next we see is David Blech, and he is giving the subjective criticism, where Blech is pushing the theory to the most radical form. वो क्या कर रहा है? वो कह रहा है the text means what readers say it means. So whatever the reader is saying, the text meaning is that. Okay, so the meaning of the text is on the reader's response and not the text itself. So Bleach is trying to take reader response to the most subjective form, where he is saying that meaning does not exist in the text. मीनिंग टेक्स्ट में नहीं है, वो रीडर के रिस्पॉन्स में ही है सिर्फ. सो रीडर का जो इंटरप्रिटेशन है, रीडर का जो रिएक्शन है, फीलिंग है, एसोसिएशन है, those are real data of interpretation. For example, you see Emily Dickinson's poem, Because I Could Not Stop for Death. Very common example where we see a student, if he is reading this poem, he might feel it as peaceful and accepting this poem. But दूसरे बच्चे को अगर वो पढ़े तो वो उसको शायद डर लगे या ठंड लगे. और तीसरे बच्चे might feel it as a personal loss or personal grief. So everyone has their own subjectivity or the subjective response. So Bleach is arguing that these responses are the meaning of the poem itself and not the poem. So meaning of the poem is the subjective interpretation of the reader. So therefore, we saw these theorists and their theories. Hope this video in a short and precise manner I could make you understand. अगर कोई doubt हो या any query or how you like this video, please comment on the comment section and like, subscribe if you channel. And thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Till then, all of you, happy learning.